Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
and I'm Stephen Park. And today we're continuing with our read, A Tiny Upward Shove. And one thing we find in these chapters is a lot of drama.
Yep.
But also a lot of shifting. So not only mental and atmospheric kind of shifting, but also physical moving of place to place.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for me personally, I've moved quite a bit over the last several years for different purposes. And you've also found yourself moving, right?
Yes, I've moved a lot right before meeting you. So I moved like about 3 times before moving with you.
Right. But there are a couple moves that I think were a little bit bigger in both of our lives. So for me, I moved cities mainly because of my schooling. And so I went to San Diego, then I went to Boston, and now I've arrived in Portland. And how about you?
Well, my biggest move was first moving out on my own on Guam, but also my biggest big move is moving from Guam to here in Portland.
Right. So, I mean, in this story, obviously, the big one is her moving down with her mother and then moving from NorCal to SoCal, which is pretty much like 2 different states. So if you're not familiar with California, Northern California and Southern California, like the Bay Area and LA, are very different places. What have you found to be with one of the hardest things with having to move, like the big move, like from Guam to PDX?
Well, the biggest move is culture-wise.
Right.
I was surrounded by people of color when I was on Guam, and rarely did I ever see a white person. And then now that I'm here in Portland, I rarely see any people of color. And I'm only really ever surrounded by white people.
And how did that end up affecting your lifestyle and the way you kind of move through your own life?
For sure. For me, it felt like I had to take on a different persona in order to find community, which at first, I mean, I was doing the best that I could with what I had. And now I'm being more vigilant, but also being more intentional about finding community among people of color.
Right. And I think for me, going to school in Boston was very different because I was with a community, even though it wasn't people that look like me. I think just being with people that had the same goals and the same interests put me in a place where I felt familiar.
Totally.
And I kind of started adapting things that they did, which was kind of like what you were saying, is familiarizing yourself with the people that are around you.
Yeah.
This is also where I got my first experiences in camping, like real actual camping, and with EDM music. I ended up going to like Steve Aoki concerts. So I think I got some really cool experiences out of the whole thing.
For sure.
That I never, like absolutely never would have seen.
For sure.
But it definitely was different. And then moving from Boston to Portland, it was much, much more different because I no longer had people that I was going to see on a daily basis.
Gotcha.
And I think the place that I ended up finding the most comfort was in my gym and with the people that I would see because we're going to the gym together.
Right, and it's like having the same goal, having the same mindset.
So Marina in the story, which we'll get to, ends up having a lot of difficulties with finding identity and feeling like she can be who she is. So for you, and this may be something that's more specific to people that are either Asian American, Asian, BIPOC of some sort, just people that don't feel extremely comfortable through every area that they go. Like, what would be a suggestion for you for people that are moving to a completely new place?
Well, when you move to a completely new place, I would say one of my suggestions is look for your people. And by that, I mean, do the things that you enjoy. So for me, for example, I enjoy reading and I enjoy book clubs. So I definitely looked at different places to find book clubs, and it turns out that they were all in places that I frequented. So for example, one book club I found through a bookstore that's the only Black-owned bookstore in the Portland area. And then the other book club I found through Instagram because I followed one of the leaders. So finding what you enjoy, where you are or where you're going to might lead you to your people.
Right. And this, for me, is probably going to be the same suggestion. And there are resources like Meetup, which I actually know friends that have used that, because Portland kind of is this area of people that have moved into the city.
Yeah.
So I knew a lot of people that didn't come in with a lot of friends. But yeah, for me, it was the gym. I do think that there are other places now that I'm noticing where people that are like us go and form communities. So recently we just went to a little festival that was outside that was based around Asian cultures, and there were different stands for Chinese Americans or Korean Americans. There was even one specific to like Korean adoptees. And I think they actually have different chapters in different cities throughout the country. So yeah, I think being able to find that community of either people that look like you, people that think like you, people that can help you feel more acclimated to your space is probably the best way to start feeling more comfortable in a new setting.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of which, there is an author that does a really great job of telling us about the different experiences of being maybe not the person that directly fits into the places that they're in. So that is going to be our recommendation for the week.
So our recommendation for the week is by an author that we've read at the beginning of our podcast, Malika Gharib, and her newsletter, A List of Beautiful Things, which I think is very necessary while we're reading this book because a lot of things here are very jarring. So, Malika Gharib's newsletter, A List of Beautiful Things, is where she sends a list of images and articles that are fascinating, dazzling, and moving. And some of these are mundane and some of these are like truly mind-blowing. And it's non-committal. It's where you can choose your own adventure. You don't have to look at every single one that she lists, but the ones that interest you, you can open the link, follow the link to where it is, and have yourself a nice day. And you can subscribe to her newsletter either on her website at malikagharib.com or directly at malika.substack.com/about. You can also see some of the entries that she includes in her newsletter on her Instagram at Malika Gharib.
And that's MALAKAGHARIB, Malika Gharib.
Yeah.
And that's our recommendation for the week. Okay, so we are in our second of 4 reads of A Tiny Upward Shove by Melissa Chadbourne. Now, what do we know so far?
So far, we have been introduced to our main character, Marina. We know that she is violated and that she is murdered. And because she has this incantation in her mind, thinking about all the things she wasn't able to do, we see that in her lineage is an aswang. So the aswang comes into her body in order to finish what's been started.
Right. So this time we're reading pages 89 through 172. That's Man of the House through The Pines. And we start off our content with a little bit of a content warning.
Similar to the last time.
Right.
Content warning, there are extreme details of sexual violence in this section, so take care of yourselves while you are reading this.
Yeah, and we need to find books that don't have this. I feel like the last several books have all been
a little dark and like heavy on the violence.
I know. But within this read, I feel like we finally are getting into the story.
Right, absolutely.
It kind of felt like, for those of you that have seen Game of Thrones, I feel like this book kind of followed that timeline of the very first scene where it's like the Nightwalkers.
Right.
And I think that was like the Aswang.
Yeah.
And then now we get to see the story kind of unfold.
Right. The first few chapters were very disjointed in that it's either very far into the future or very much in the present.
Right.
This time we see that we're in the present and then like a little bit in the past.
Right. And more like storytelling. Like
Yes,
a little bit in the
absolutely.
past before what happens, but it felt like we're now following a timeline of some sort.
Yeah.
And I ended up reading this book slightly ahead of Jamae. And I just kept asking, like, are you there yet? And she's like, what do you, no, I don't think so.
Right.
I was like, you'll know when you get there.
Yeah, and I absolutely knew once I got there. I was like, oh, no.
Yes. So let's get there. So firstly, let's talk about the mom, Mutya, and let's talk about the very poor Tinder decisions that she's making.
I feel like either she's super idyllic and that she sees these men and forgets that they have faults, or she just gets starry-eyed for some reason.
I feel like she finds her identity within the men that she dates. Like, I remember seeing people, and you probably would recognize this to some sort, is friends that would date someone and all of a sudden they're picking up the traits of those friends. Like, when did you become a rock climber? Like, you've never gone out at a day in your life.
Right. Or all of a sudden they're wearing pleather or leather and you're like, what is this? You've never worn these kinds of clothes before.
Right. And I feel like that's Mutya. So one of the big stories, and this was someone that she dated in the last read.
Yeah.
We just
didn't get to know that person really well.
Right. And they told a little bit about him, but I just don't think we thought that it would be as big of a story as it is.
Right, right.
But that's Mike.
Yes, a white person.
Right. And Mike is not a great person.
Like, terrible. Like, it feels like he doesn't have a personality outside of, oh, my parents are rich.
Right. And just the way that he treats people, but more specifically Marina,
yeah,
is pretty awful.
Yeah, like there's one scene where they go to the beach.
Oh yeah.
And he challenges Marina to a rock climbing activity and leaves her.
Right.
Because he's so awesome at rock climbing, and it's like, this girl is 8 and she's tiny too.
Yeah, he clearly doesn't have a sense of what it would be like to step into the father role.
Yeah.
Because there are many instances that we see where he is ignoring Marina.
Right.
But I think one of the biggest storylines that Mike brings into A Tiny Upward Shove is having the women, so having Mutya and Marina leave Lola's place and travel down to LA.
Yeah, like completely uproots this family.
Right.
So not only are they leaving, but Marina and Mutya are both moving in with Mike.
Right.
And Mike does nothing for them.
No, he's not even there all the time.
He's not there all the time, but he's also not paying for anything.
Right, right. While Mutya is trying to go to school.
And working multiple jobs.
Right. Good and bad news is that Mike ends up leaving.
Ugh.
And it's not extremely helpful. I mean, so the thing is, we see how toxic the relationship was for Mutya and Mike, and how much it affected Marina. Like, there was that scene where Marina came out of her bedroom and saw Mike and Mutya on the ground, and she not only physically wanted to go in between them, but she kind of had these feelings of wanting to hurt Mike.
Yeah.
So, just not the best overall relationship or fit for that family.
Yeah.
But the next person that Mutya finds is worse.
Ugh. This is where the content warning comes in. So maybe if you don't want to listen to it, maybe fast forward a minute or two.
Well, let's first talk about how they meet.
Okay.
Because that in itself is kind of interesting.
Right. So Mutya is out clubbing, partying.
Yeah, and she meets this person named Fatima. And I think they're going out together, if I remember correctly.
Right, because they first meet at Mutya's place of work because Fatima, is that how you pronounce it?
I don't know. That's how I've pronounced my friend's named Fatima in the past.
Oh, the way I've pronounced it with someone that I know is Fatima.
Oh.
Anyway, they meet at Mutya's place of work. Fatima or Fatima teaches them how to belly dance. And so they become close. Like, all of them become close.
Right. And what ends up happening is that they become closer friends. And Fatima eventually introduces Mutya to her friend, who's Sam.
I don't think that she was introduced to Sam. Instead, they were out clubbing, and Mutya notices Sam, aka Yasir,
Right.
across the dance floor, and then tries to sidle up to him and,
True.
you know, the dancey.
Yeah, like they catch eyes and they start wanting to hang out with each other.
I mean, I guess.
Right. So, I mean, this is the start of the relationship that Mutya forms with Sam, who also does not seem like a great guy.
Nope. And it becomes very apparent once Mutya keeps leaving Marina behind alone at home, only to spend days and even nights with this guy.
But how can you say no to, and I'm going to quote the book, the Disco King on the Cheesecake Factory floor?
Oh, Lord Jesus.
So...
Oh, the fact that this was at Cheesecake Factory, too.
Oh, yeah. This was at the Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah.
So there was also that moment during their meeting.
When they're dancing.
Yeah, and like Mutya
was trying to lip sync and sing to the John Travolta song.
She was singing, not just lip syncing. But yeah, you're right, she was singing.
And then he's like, who sings this? And then she's like, John Travolta, duh. And then he's like, well, let's keep it that way.
I know.
What an a-hole.
Which also, what an 8-year-old. Like, that was the joke that I told when I was a kid. Like, how are you a grown man and this is the peak of your comedy?
Right.
Get it together, Sam. But that was the instance that Mutya felt so struck down that she left the dance floor to go sit by herself.
Right.
Which in itself should tell you, like, don't date this dude.
Right.
But I think Mutya has that type of wanting to go for the person that's not maybe the greatest.
Yeah.
And so when Sam comes over and says, I forget.
He tries to be nice to her all of a sudden.
Well, he says, I love you in his language, which I can't remember what
No, he doesn't say I love you. He asks the Cheesecake Factory people to sing happy birthday and give her a cake.
Right.
And because he doesn't know her name yet, he calls her Habibti, which means my love.
Right.
And that, for some reason, woos Mutya into being like, oh my gosh, he's so awesome.
But he's not.
He's not at all.
Right. Neither are his friends.
No. Ugh. And this is the part where content warning, big time.
Right. So what happens is Marina has been left at home multiple times.
Yes.
Mutya has been going out. She's been seeing Sam. Even before that, she's been seeing other people. So Marina starts yearning for these moments with Mutya.
Yeah.
And she eventually asks her mom to go with her so that she could hang out together.
Yes.
So her mom finally agrees, and they end up going to Sam's place.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of people there that aren't just Sam and Mutya, but of course Sam and Marina's mom end up going to a room where they just leave.
They split up.
Right.
And Fatima is also there, and she goes to the bathroom to start touching up her makeup. And Marina, feeling safety around Fatima, goes to her, and so she does get made up as well.
Right. And at this point, Marina is enjoying it. She is enjoying this time that she gets to spend with it's somewhat of a motherly figure at this moment, and she's getting really pretty, and she's getting all these, I think she gets beads on her as well.
Beads or the coins, the jingling,
the dancing coins.
Yes.
And this is a slight happy peak before they step out of the bathroom. So Fatima, I'm going to call her Fatima.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Fatima is out there, and she is a belly dancer. There's a slight bit in this book that tells about the background of her story and the trauma that she's had in the past.
Yeah.
But she is the belly dancer that is trying to just lure these men and I
And
guess show
keep
them a good
at bay,
time.
yeah.
Yeah, and the reason why she is there is seemingly related to drugs,
Yes.
which we kind of find out after the bad incident happens. But Fatima's dancing with the men. They then separate into a separate room with all the men except one going into that room with Fatima or Fatima. But that leaves Marina, who's a very young girl at this time, like 12 or something.
She's 14.
14.
But she's by herself because her mom's not there at all.
Right. By herself, but not by herself because Sam's brother's there. Hassan.
Yeah.
This then leads to a very graphically written scene with the short story is Hassan raping Marina in the bathroom. If that weren't bad enough, and the details of it are really detailed,
right,
at the end of all that, he puts drugs on her.
Yes.
And so that it can numb her from the pain.
Right.
Seemingly later on in the story, as we get to the end of this current read, it does seem like Marina starts getting into drugs, or she has been into drugs, or it seems like it's a part of her life as she gets older.
Right.
Obviously, this probably has an effect that has led to that.
Right.
But all of it's bad. Like, all of this kind of destroys the girl that she is. There's the moments where she's curled up into a ball.
And she's pretending to be asleep because she just doesn't want to deal with anyone or anything.
Right. And then Sam comes in and, like, messes with Mutya, like, while Marina's in the bed. And it's like, oh my gosh, like, this poor girl is just being traumatized left and right. And all because all she wanted to do was hang out with her mom.
Yeah.
This eventually leads to the next part where the police come in, but the reason they come in isn't even because of the assault or anything. It's because of a noise disturbance.
Right.
But when they see this young girl who's seemingly just looking traumatized,
and then seeing the drugs and the number of people that's in this one place,
as well as Mutya's black eye, like, there's so many bad things that are here. They pull Marina out of there and they send her away.
Yes.
So I feel like this is a good time to talk about what may have led here, and that is Marina and Mutya's relationship.
It seems like their relationship is very wonky as well. Like, Marina has this blind faith in her mom.
Right. I mean, wonky is like a very kind way of putting it. It's extremely broken.
Totally.
It's a daughter consistently looking for love and looking up to her mom, but lacking any sort of
validation or love.
Except these couple of moments that Marina does get where her mom sits down with her. I mean, a big portion of love came while Marina was having tuberculosis, and her mom finally felt the need to take care of her daughter.
Right.
And Marina looks back on this time as some of the best times that she's had because of the care that she finally got from her mom.
Totally. I think part of this brokenness that her mom is feeling is like being left or having to leave Marina's dad and wanting to fill that hole and thus forgetting about Marina as a child.
Right. I just don't understand why Mutya felt the need to take Marina down there. Like, the thought that kept popping on my head is, why didn't she just leave Marina with Lola? Like, why not just, like, Lola could have taken care of her. She was taking care of everyone.
Right.
Why not just leave her with Lola?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That was probably one of the parts that frustrated me the most out of this story is with the way that this book is written, we know the story that happens to Marina. We know that eventually she gets killed by Willie.
Right.
As we're reading more italicized bits into our second read, we see why she gets into that truck with Willie. We see how this has carried out.
Right. I think the reason why Mutya brings Marina, I'm reminded of the chapter where someone calls the house and asks for the head of the house, and Marina says, "You're speaking to her."
Mm-hmm.
I think the reason Mutya brings Marina is because otherwise there is no anchor. Otherwise there is no one who's reminding her to pay the bills.
Which is sad, because, yeah, like, the bills don't get paid, the lights get turned off,
Right.
like, but the person that has to suffer through that is Marina.
Yeah.
We later see when Marina gets taken away that one of her biggest concerns
Is that her mom's gonna break down and not know what to do.
Right. So it's not, I don't know, it's just so unfair, selfish. It's just not right to bring down this little girl and not only expect her to live in your world that is so rarely actually filled at home,
Right.
but also to have that little girl have to grow up and take care of you.
Right. Ugh. So the word that's coming to mind is just toxic.
Right. There are sweet moments with that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
It's the constant need for affection that really destroys that relationship between Marina and Mutya.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which is so frustrating because she doesn't even find a good guy. At least find a good guy.
Yeah.
Someone that wants to be there for Marina.
Wants to take care of either of them.
Yeah. So frustrating.
For real.
But the cops take away Marina.
Brings her to CPS.
Right. And Mutya does seemingly a good job of saying, like, I do want to bring you back. It seems like Mutya wants Marina back.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
I don't think it ever happens.
Yeah. So Marina gets taken to the police.
Mm-hmm.
They eventually find her a foster home. And
it's not really a foster home. It's a juvenile hall.
Right. True. The goal is that they're going to keep her there until Lola can come down and pick her up and then take her back to her Lola's the
plastic palace.
Yeah.
But also, I think that doesn't happen either.
I don't think so either. Which we'll get to our predictions.
Yes. But at the juvenile hall, she meets her bunkmate, Alex.
Mm-hmm. Who seems like someone that she's going to form a friendship with.
Yeah. It seems like this is where she's able to find trust and also find someone who's going to reciprocate that trust.
Right, and also it seems like Alex is going to be someone to guide her through this mess and kind of this introduction into this new space.
Right, and one of her suggestions is you need to fight somebody today.
Right, it's kind of like prison rules.
Right. Ooh.
Which Marina definitely finds someone to fight.
She does find someone to fight, and she doesn't give in, and I think this is where the break happens, where she's no longer the affectionate person she was with her mom and with her Lola, and she's now finding the angry parts, the unleashed parts that want to fight.
And there's a quote in the book that explains it extremely well, which is, she was no longer asking for permission, she was taking it. She was letting loose what was caught inside her.
Yes.
I agree. I think this is where Marina comes out. I think this is where she becomes unleashed.
Yes.
But at the same time, we see the environment that she's now in, and it doesn't look extremely good.
Yeah.
And once again, knowing the ending of the story before we know the middle and the beginning,
right,
this definitely seems like also that turning point of not only where she goes from this character who's no longer obedient, but that starts doing things that lead her down a path that eventually probably gets her killed.
Right.
So that leads us into some of the italicized portions. Now this kind of confuses me a little bit because I thought previously the italicized portions were thoughts from the Aswang. Is that still the case? Is this the Aswang looking through Marina's memories?
That's what I was thinking. Because at the beginning, it definitely was the Aswang's perspective.
Right.
I don't think it's shifted. I think now the Aswang is like figuring out where things went wrong, maybe?
Right. And I believe that this puts things onto page 81. This is page 81 of the hardback. And this is the italicized portion that shows December 12th, 1994, when Marina is picked up by Willie.
Mm-hmm.
From here, there are several other italicized portions between chapters that talk about what happens within that pickup to the drive to,
arriving at the place.
Right.
And I don't think getting picked up is necessarily what happened. I think she got kidnapped. Because she was getting into the car knowing the drug dealer, but not knowing Willie.
Fair. Right.
And she also was not planning to go that far out of town.
My only reason for saying that it wasn't kidnapping is that it seemed like Marina only had one thing on her mind.
Yeah.
She didn't seem to care where she was going as long as she got that one thing, which is the thing in the fanny pack.
That's fair, but also she wasn't consenting to be brought out this far regardless of where her mind was.
True. Okay, so that was our read. Mm-hmm. It's intense.
Mm-hmm, very intense.
Which also made me think this book really has you feel the feels.
Yes, like all the yucky feels, all the intense feels, all the hopeful and wishing feels too.
But it just made me feel what the characters were feeling. Like the way it was written just made it feel like it was happening to me, even though I was reading it as happening to someone else.
Right.
The other book that I kind of felt this with was The Kite Runner, which maybe we'll read sometime in the future, but there's a very big moment in that book as well that felt like it was a dagger into my heart. And that scene in the bathroom, the poor thing that happened to Marina, like I was reading that moment and I was supposed to go out and meet a couple of friends, but I was like, I can't put this book down in the middle of this scene, and it feels wrong, and I also don't want to pick it up again and then have to revamp these emotions up.
Right, exactly.
So I was like, all right, you guys can wait. Let me just read this out a little bit. But I don't know. It makes you feel everything, and like you said, the feelings aren't really joy, so it kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there are those moments where, like, I think Mutya was like petting Marina's hair and stuff, and like that felt like a little flutter in your heart for a second until like Sam comes in or something. I don't know, like the next bad thing happens.
Right.
How did you feel reading this book?
I had a little different experience. I didn't feel like it was happening to me, but I felt empathetic towards the characters, like especially Marina when she was left behind by Mike and she was trying to find her mom. And when her mom once again left her with Yasser and she was trying to find her, I felt those feelings, but not as if it were happening to me.
I mean, there was even that moment with Fatima where she was in that separated room with the three guys. This is when we kind of look back on that moment and we're like, where is Fatima? Where is Marina? And like it told Fatima's side, and she was
trying to get out.
She was trying to get out, and she knew what was happening, and she rushed out as soon as she could, but it was already too late. I also thought it was interesting that they never said where Mutya was.
Right.
So let's talk about predictions then, because Mutya is definitely going to be in the story. We just don't know how yet.
Right. Do you think we'll ever know where she went?
Within that moment?
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like this is one of those things where the author leaves it up to interpretation.
Gotcha. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Do you think so?
Well, now that we're talking about it, I'm thinking that if Fatima gets her side told, maybe Mutya's comes in later?
Maybe.
It's possible.
Yeah.
We know where this goes. I think it's gonna continue revealing how the juvenile hall meets Marina where she is with Willie.
Do you think that Mutya and Marina ever come back together?
I think no. I think Marina keeps going down this downward spiral and then just never sees Lola, never sees Mutya. Mutya just continues to be on her own.
Yeah, I don't think Lola comes.
No.
I feel like her name is just going to disappear with the story.
Right.
I feel like Mutya is going to come back in some way. And I feel like there's going to be a scene where Marina rejects Mutya. Like, I feel like the turn that's now happened, there is going to be that moment where she's like, no, you treated me wrong, and then not look back.
Right.
There's also a moment on page 148 where Marina is being questioned by the detectives because the detectives see all the signs of...
the evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At that moment, Marina is thinking. She's no longer just being a victim.
Right.
But she's like, okay, how can I manipulate this to my advantage? What she does, and I'll quote the book, is she knew that more than one person was hurt that night by more than one bad man. If there was one person she didn't want to keep on hurting people, she knew it was him. His name is Yasir, but people call him Sam. Does it come back? Maybe. It seems like a very interesting moment of calling out the other person.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of want to know what happens to Sam then.
Right.
What happens to... Also, Hassan was an awful individual, so I hope something bad happens to him too.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, I'm hoping that the Aswang does something to both of them.
That'd
not
be
just
funny.
Willie.
That would be very much appreciated in these dark times.
Yes.
Well, we won't know until we read into the next portion of our book.
Yes.
And that's going to be...
from pages 173 to 256 in the hardcover, or from the chapter called Blessed to the chapter called Elsewhere.
Right. And hopefully y'all are willing to stick with, let's call this the depressive times of Asian Book Club.
I know.
I'll try to find a better... I'll try to find a lighter, more happier book for our next read.
Yes.
But if you have any opinions, if you need a space where you can share some thoughts, how can people reach us?
You can rant at us about this book through our email at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com. You can also join the conversation or, again, rant at us at Asian Book Club Pod on Instagram.
Right, and we also have our website, asianbookclubpod.com, where we have our bookshop, which shows books that we've read or that we plan to read or books that we recommend. Not all of them have this dark side to them.
Yes.
Otherwise, keep reading with us. Hopefully this book gets a little bit lighter. But otherwise, be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat.
Bye.
Bye.